So, as you guys know, there's only one tank that I'm going to play when Dragonflight hits. That tank is going to be the warrior. Now, Shah was the person who showed us the in the other video the battering ram build, which was pretty friggin' cool, by the way. Really like that build. Probably going to be incorporating battering ram. Battering ram sounds like a lot of fun. And Shah has made an analysis on what tank feels good based on the Dragonflight beta. So I'm very curious to see, especially taking into consideration Blizzard's recent round of nerfs on the warrior. Very curious to see where the warrior lands. So let's check it out.
Today we are slapping the bejesus out of a tier list. Yup. Cringe, I know. I'm well aware that tier lists are dumb, that's a fact. But this is a simple structure for me to lay out how I feel the tanks are performing right now currently on the Dragonflight beta.
Boost the tank with
Before you go down to the comment section, let me just say this, that it's not going to be strictly based off of power. Even though we are using a tier list type format, instead of having an S, A, B, C tier, so on and so forth.
You can't just go for straight out of power for tanking, because power for tanking includes a lot of things. Can you guys even see the D? I mean, you'll say it, so we should be able to see it. But it's like, when it comes to tanking, a lot of it is about survivability, utility, and how you can handle different pulls and different boss fight mechanics, and whether or not you have the tools to be an overall fantastic tank, which historically hasn't really been the case for warriors for a while, at least at the start of expansions. So let's see where we're at.
We are actually going to rank them as either needs major tuning, minor tuning, or feels good and smooth. Basically, how do the tanks feel to play, and are they ready for Mythic Plus testing? Sound good? Okay, cool. Go hit that like button. As some of you may know, or not, I have spent roughly 120 hours of playtime over the last couple weeks testing the tanks on beta. Trust me, my mom's not proud. I've tested all...
Ooh. Sorry, dude.
All 6 tanks quite rigorously. Different builds, talents, and of course in dungeons, you name it. I've also talked a lot about some of my favorite builds so far. You can actually find those videos down below in case you've missed any of them. With that being said, let's break down each tank and rank them. First things first though, let's start off with a quick disclaimer. This testing so far is strictly based on my heroic dungeon testing experience, both at a set item level and a scaled item level. I'm well aware that this type of content is extremely limiting when it comes to testing. This video isn't meant to predict a meta, but instead inform people on a subjective analysis of how I feel the tank should play up to this point. Also, there have been a ton of bugs with several classes that I'm going to try to talk about and hint on as I go through this. With that out of the way, let's start with what I think the most average tank is right now, and we can work around that. I'm pretty ecstatic to see Blood Death Knight return to its old chaotic playstyle. With the new tree and the removal of their Season 3 tier set, their kit is much less linear, and they actually have a ton of flexibility in both their spec tree and their class tree to hit multiple capstone choices, which really
Interesting how he says that he's going for the average and he starts with a Blood DK. So Blood DK, now average.
bolster their kit. While the gameplay flow feels much better, I would say that this is maybe one of the tanks that needs a pretty good damage tuning check. Now, I know I mentioned I wasn't going to talk much on a damage profile, but I think it's important to note that Blood Death Knights have fallen severely behind than other tanks in performance, often doing about 15 to 25.
It's about time these fucking Death Knights paid some tax. Enjoy it, motherfuckers! Then the Warrior's been paying way too many taxes recently. It's time somebody else does the paying. Fuck them. Fuck Blood DKs. I don't give a fuck.
% less.
I'm joking.
Damage than the other tanks. I may just be bad at the game, but I've tried pretty hard to optimize the throughput of this class with ultimately no luck. This might be some slight oversight, but we may not know until we actually can test harder content, because currently the talent capstone Umbilicus Eternus is giving me a shield large enough to cover a one-shot, which is insane for a tank to have access to. With the right talents, this has tremendous uptime and
I mean, it could just be a balancing. It's like, hey, look, this tank is tanky as fuck, but he doesn't output as much damage as the other ones.
Potential. This may outweigh the slight lack of damage, but we're going to see over the next couple weeks once we can actually begin Mythic Plus testing. So with that being said, I do think that this does need minor tuning. With the latest beta build, there were almost zero changes to Guardian Druid, which left us bear boys feeling a little neglected. There were almost no updates and still...
Imagine playing a Guardian Druid. That is the one class that I was always like, yeah, I'm not interested. So it has two major disadvantages when compared to other tanks. There's two major disadvantages. You want to know what they are? Disadvantage number one, they always look like a bear. There's the bear. Every time, you're just the bear. You're just looking at bear ass. Like, that's what you're doing. Disadvantage number two, you can't be a dwarf. Which makes it instantly like fall off the list of worthless. Can't be a dwarf. Would never play it.
Some major bugs with Incarnation and the cooldown reduction component, which caused rage spending to grant recovery time towards Incarnation and Berserk. Yes, I said both because Blizzard separated them into two separate abilities that could be used independently from each other. Also, the cooldown reduction talent was extremely overtuned, since instead of giving us 1 second off for every 20 rage spent, it was giving us 20 seconds off for every 20 rage spent, allowing us to have permanent uptime on Incarnation if this talent was selected. Now, in a very recent minor hotfix, this issue was addressed, and now the class seems to be working as currently intended, which, in my opinion, still shit. While a Galactic Guardian playstyle is a cool concept, it lacks any real depth to the gameplay design and has a pretty poor implementation. With the latest build containing almost no notes or changes, I would like to believe that this is because Blizzard is actually planning on a much larger rework and tuning the class and the specialization. I know, pure hopium, but since this is the case, I think I'm going to place Bear in the expecting a major rework / tuning department. Alright, with some of the doom and gloom out of the way, let's talk about the rest of the tanks. Now, slight spoiler, they're all actually feeling really good, but let's go through them together. Brewmaster Monk so far has been my favorite tank to play on beta. While this class mostly feels the same when it...
The thing about Brewmaster Monk, by the way, and why Brewmaster Monk is always going to be a good tank, is because if you think about it, what is the most important thing for a tank? Like, I don't know how many of you guys play tanks or how many of you guys play healers, but a healer would be able to answer that question with tremendous specificity. The most important thing for a tank is how fast he loses health, or how slow he loses health, basically. That's one of the most, assuming that you know what you are doing, then the most important thing that differentiates one tank from another is how predictable is your HP. Is it going to like go down in big chunks and then go up in big chunks and down in big chunks? That's not what you want. You want to be able to look at it and see it going down a boop, 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 heal. Boop, 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 heal. Like, that's what you want from a tank. You want predictable health pool. And the monk, based on the way that they designed it, is fundamentally, at least from my experience in the past, because things might have changed during Shadowlands that I wasn't paying attention to, but from past experiences, Monk is fundamentally the king of predictable health pool because it has a stagger mechanic, which is straight up. The way that it works is whatever hits you, cut down 50% of that damage, and you put it on the layaway plan. So basically, the Monk has an escrow for damage. So whenever you take damage, it gets put onto a bank account, and then you decide when you want to pay it off. And the best part is that you can get drunk, not pay it off, and everybody forgets about it. And that's the advantage of the Monk. Right? Is that it's like, oh my God, I have this huge current of depth. I have a ton of HP depth. I guess I'm going to get drunk, forget about all my problems, and they'll go away. Because that's what you can do as a monk. Pretty much. Pretty much. So, that's why the monk is always going to be one of the most reliable tanks, no matter which expansion you're in, unless they fundamentally change the way the stagger mechanic works.
When it comes to its kit, there are a ton of playstyles and builds that can cater to a lot of different scenarios or players' preferences. There are still a few known bugs with the tree. For example, the Weapon of Order capstone talent, Chi Surge, still will randomly proc during combat, which ends up having an insanely high uptime on the dot, which doesn't seem to be intended. Outside of this bug, it's
incandescent.
Ari the Awesome One, thank you very much for being wrestling with us for 47 months. Tip of the hat. Appreciate the support. Thank you. Thank you very much.
pretty easy to play Brewmaster based on playstyle, focusing on either purifying much more often with talent choices like Bone Dust Brew or Anvil and Stave and Special Delivery, or another build that I've talked about before which minimizes the need for CDs or rotational buttons, focuses a little bit more on Spinning Crane Kick and Breath of Fire in cadence with Charred Passions. My only massive gripe with the tree is that it seems to lack a lot of self-sustained healing, which is a pretty important factor for Mythic Plus, but since we haven't been able to test that type of content yet, it's still up for debate and totally in the air. Not to even mention what our tier set might be. Regardless of which build you end up playing, it's pretty adaptable, and I think the spec is in a really good spot besides a few minor bugs. With the last build, Demon Hunter got a pretty large...
Here's another tank that I can instantly tell you should suck. This tank should suck. Let me explain to you why. Why does Demon Hunter need to suck? Number one, you have to be an elf. You understand? You have to be an elf. That should already be enough for this tank to be completely discounted. Nobody should play it because you have to be an elf. Number two, if you have to be an elf, you can't be a dwarf. That's like two things against it. So, yeah, we should just get rid. As a matter of fact, we should just delete this tank from the game. You should just delete the tanking tree, and he would just become a damage dealer, and that's where you go. Now, in all honesty, like this tank, historically has been pretty fucking potent with the amount of health drain that they can do. It's just like completely ridiculous. And the amount of mobility that they get because of glide. Because you can glide in instances and it allows you to basically move faster than any of the other tanks. So their mobility combined with the amount of health steal that they had made them pretty much the default tank for Mythic Plus, at least in BFA, if I remember correctly. And also, if I remember, Now was playing... during BFA, I think that Now was playing Demon Hunter during the... it was Shadowlands. Now was playing a Demon Hunter in Shadowlands as his main. Yeah, which is... it's pretty beast. It's pretty beast.
Or a nerf, but accompanied with some individual buffs to specific abilities ranging anywhere between a 4 to 10% increase. This seems like Blizzard might be finalizing some of the tuning with the Vengeance Demon Hunter's damage and healing capabilities. While it can be seen as a good thing, I'm a little disheartened with the Demon Hunter tree still. It's hard to argue to make any advancements through the right side of the talent tree. Now, of course, the Fiery Brand talents are underwhelming due to the level of content that we are doing, which can absolutely be the case. I just can't imagine a world where it's playable and high-end Mythic Plus content, but I would love to watch this statement not age too well.
Oh, wow. It's not even playable in high-level Mythic Plus content? Oh, I'm so sad. No, in all honesty, all tanks should be viable. It sucks to have that one tank that kind of sucks, so I do hope they tune it.
They also fixed a bunch of bugs interacting with their frailty debuffs and damage stacking and multipliers, which is great. Because of this, I would love to believe that this is where they want the tanks to be when it comes to damage profiles. Outside of damage, the ability to self-heal and survive seems fine, though, as I've stated numerous times already, I think Mythic Plus testing will truly shine a light on how sturdy this tank feels. I think most of us are still trying to cope with the fact that we lost Blur, though notably insanely overpowered. I want to add one last note. After testing all tanks through countless runs, this is the one tank that I think feels the most clunky in terms of rotation fluidity. It seems with certain talent choices, the Fury generation gets slightly sporadic and leads to this disjointed rotation, especially with the tax cost to Spirit Bomb, but we'll just have to see. This class is pretty solid in terms of shipping. All that's left is for Mythic Plus. Protection Paladin started in this beta cycle as one of my least favorite tanks to play, and it was all doom and gloom. With the removal of Holy Power generation from Avenger's Shield, along with the extra Holy Power generation being removed from things like our tier set, this was really a big turnoff for the class. But over the last few weeks and hours upon hours of testing, this is easily one of my favorite tanks to play currently on beta. Well, besides Brewmaster, of course. There were a ton of bugs with the new iteration.
I'm just going to point out, look at the damage meter. It's going to listen. Just going to point it out, all right? Look, I'm not saying that Paladins always get the most attention from Blizzard. I'm not going to point that out. No, it's me. No, never. I'm not going to point that out at all. I'm just telling you that this tank right here is destroying everybody else in this fucking party.
Protection Paladin, that was causing a lot of distaste. From the lack of damage to a completely change in pace when it comes to the fluidity of the rotation. And
also notice that not only he's topping the damage meters, he's also topping the healing meters. I'm just going to point that out. I'm just going to leave that out there, man. You guys do what you want with that information, but I'm just going to point it out, all right? My man's just like literally topping damage and healing. Seems perfectly balanced to me.
Generation of holy power. This last build saw a few aura buffs and patched bugs that were causing talent choices like Seal of Order not to influence Blessing of Dusk properly regarding the cooldown recovery rates. Other talents like Tears Enforcer were not scaling properly with the extra talent point. This was also fixed. There are still a handful of bugs like...
Remember that part where you just said that like, oh man, but Paladins always burst in AoE and they're amazing. Well, now it's single target and he's still top damage.
For example, Guardian of Ancient Kings actually will instantly reset upon casting a Vendor Shield, which I think is working just fine. While there is another playstyle option with a different talent build, the Dusk and Dawn build seems to be extremely enjoyable and is a very steady pacing of the rotation both inside and outside of cooldowns. Once those bugs are fixed, I'm actually extremely excited for how protection...
Why are you not a Paladin, Ruri? I was. During Shadowlands, I played a Paladin because it was the only class that I could play with a shield. Because I sure as fuck couldn't play a warrior because the fucking class wasn't fucking viable, and I'm totally not fucking salty about it because it was totally not the fucking case with BFA as well. No, it's I feel perfectly fine. No, I'm good. Yeah, I'm happy about it. Yeah.
Paladin is going to perform. This last build saw little changes to the Protection Warrior, so yes, you may all rejoice. For now. With little to zero nerfs coming through the latest build, it seems Blizzard is fairly content with where warriors are at currently in terms of fluidity, damage, and self-sustain. Now it's pretty easy to jump on board the warrior train, but once Mythic testing comes out, more than likely we're going to see them rein in the numbers a little bit. In this current state, I think most of us would be pretty happy with the Protection Warrior meta season, but let's not get too excited. Or, quite frankly, ahead of ourselves. With increased values coming into play, it's very possible that warriors will need to actually pull back a little bit on some of their offensive talent choices and target some more defensive talent choices like Spell Block. Though this is completely to be determined. But as long as Blizzard doesn't touch rage generation all that much, or haste values with this class, it's going to feel extremely fun to play regardless. It's not overly complicated and has an insanely enjoyable feedback loop. And that does it. That's my pseudo rankings on which tanks are, I think, good for Mythic Plus testing, and which tanks I think need a little bit of attention.
I didn't see the damage. Let me see. What was the damage like?
Meta season, but let's not get too excited. Or, quite frankly, ahead of ourselves.
It's not even top damage with the Paladin. He was topping the damage. What do you mean?
With increased values coming into play, it's very possible that warriors will need to actually pull back
with the Paladin. He was topping the damage
and target some more defensive talent choices like
Spell
Block. Though this is completely to be determined.
Not fair.
But as long as Blizzard doesn't touch rage generation all that much or haste values with this class, it's going to feel extremely fun to play regardless. It's not overly complicated and has an insanely enjoyable feedback loop. And that does it. That's my pseudo rankings on which tanks are, I think, good for Mythic Plus testing, and which tanks I think need a little bit of attention. With the Dragonflight date announcement being confirmed for November 28th, I am eagerly waiting to see how the first season will turn out. I personally have never been more excited for an expansion than I am for Dragonflight, so buckle up. We got more testing to do.
This trial, of course,
huge shout out to all my patrons.
Although I guess I need to point that out, guys. I was joking about the damage numbers. Of course, it's just one. I keep forgetting that some people actually take me literally in the comment section. They're gonna be like, "Look at this fucking dumbass. He's like one encounter, derp, fucking bald man, idiot, not smart." It's like it's part of these videos is information. Part of it is supposed to be entertainment. It's a joke. But yeah. No, you didn't bait me, Michelle. It's actually good that you reminded me because I guess I feel like I need to point it out because unfortunately there are people in the comments like, oh my god, so dumb. You're right.
Patreon supporters, I genuinely can't thank you guys enough for the support. It honestly it means the world to me. Hope you guys are all staying happy, healthy, and I will catch you all in the next one. Peace.
Okay, guys, make sure to go in here, leave it a like, and like I always say, put it playing in the background or something. Give it some watch time as well. Don't just like and leave, because that is not good for the algorithm. Although he's doing pretty damn well for the algorithm. Holy shit, dude's got like 8,000 subs, and he's pulling 17K. Give him a sub. Fuck it, let's go. He doesn't even have a join button yet. Come on, YouTube, give this man a join button. What the fuck, bro? What the fuck? Dude's doing good World of Warcraft content. Come on. Let's get it done.